Hi, friends and family,
Welcome to Hope After Addiction
with your hosts, Katie Comer.
and Chelsea McLeod.
Hi, welcome to Hope After Addiction. We're so happy that you've joined us here today. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Anything new going on in your life?
Not that I can think of, which I guess is a good thing.
That's
Trying
good.
to think, Hannah.
Yeah. I don't
no.
think so. We already talked about my 40th birthday last time, so we don't have anything else to talk about.
That's right.
So, moving on. Next stop. No, we last week we talked about how we've been getting some topics for some of our episodes from people who have written us saying this is what I'm really struggling with. Through our social medias, through our email, whatever it may be. This next topic is from people that we've have relationships with that have contacted us that we're kind of walking through this season with them. But this topic is for the people who have loved ones who don't think that they have a problem or won't admit that they have a problem or know that they have a problem and don't want to get help.
That's right.
So it's in some sort of realm of they're not getting help and they need it.
Yeah. And I think we've probably all heard a little bit of that in
Yeah.
our walk with addiction.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's two categories. One is they grew up as a norm. Your dad drank 12 beers a night, so you don't think that it's a problem. Or two, you know that you have a problem, but you're in denial and you're not going to admit it. But I think all know deep down that there is a problem.
Yeah.
They're just not ready to admit it yet.
And then when you get married to somebody or you're around somebody, your loved one, whoever it may be, and you're like, no, those 12 beers are not normal.
That's not okay.
And it's not.
Yeah.
And it affects you.
Yeah.
And for them to like, how do we get from them saying this is normal to, okay,
Yeah.
I need help and I need to get free from this because it's controlling me.
Yeah.
That's hard if
It's
they're not
hard.
willing to or they don't recognize it in themselves.
Yeah. And that's the hardest part for you right now, because if you're in that place with somebody that doesn't need help, because your push is coming with pushback.
Yeah.
Because they don't think that they need help or don't want to admit that yet. And they typically, I tell my wives and the husbands, I'm like, they know what you're speaking is truth. They know it.
Yeah, they just don't want to admit it.
So you're going to get that pushback, but keep pushing.
Why do you think that they push back so much? They don't want to get rid of the substance that they're using, or
I really think, and we talk about this all the time, but it goes back into the inside of that cup. And so they know that there's issues deep down, but we live in a society and come from even a millennial before this one that it's not okay to talk about it, or I'm supposed to be strong and not have problems or not have issues. So they're not ready to necessarily confront what is actually happening deep down or why they are numbing what's going on. They don't know even to go to that level or that realm that, hey, there's something deeper and you're using or you're drinking because you're numbing what's happened in your past. And I don't think a lot of people are ready to confront that or face it.
yeah, I think it's like an underlying issue of being scared to confront their past, their trauma. And addiction doesn't always have to root from trauma, but it does a lot. I know that the guys at S2L, the majority of them have trauma.
Heartbreaking trauma. Yeah.
Yeah, like really tough stuff. But some of, like Adam, for example, my husband,
That's true.
he didn't have trauma.
That's true.
He had a great family, great upbringing, Christian home.
Yeah.
He did not have that trauma.
Yeah.
And so for Adam, he loves those guys and works with those guys heavily that deal with trauma. But some of his heart is for the guy that looks like he has it all together.
Yeah.
And he's like, why would you choose? You had it. You had everything. You had a wife. You have kids.
Yeah.
You have a great family. You have great friends. None of them are addicted. Why would you choose to go down that route?
Yeah.
I mean, pilots, you know, people in the military, all these people that you're like, oh my goodness, you have so much going for you.
Yeah.
Adam's like, that guy needs help. You know, that's who my heart is for.
Yeah.
Everybody needs it. But so we're kind of getting off track, but nonetheless, it does a lot of times it does root in trauma.
Yeah.
So kind of going back to that, I think that there is the not wanting to stop numbing that because they're going to have to face it.
And it's uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah. Scary.
And then ultimately, sometimes they just don't think that they have a problem.
It's
You know, like they're like, they might recognize it, but they also might not recognize that they have a problem.
Yeah.
And that's tricky. It's really tricky. And just trying to walk through that with you. What were some of the things, if they don't realize that they have a problem, what were some of the things that you said that they could help in that?
This is what's hard is, you know, with the situation that you might be in where your loved one doesn't want help or says that they don't.
Yeah.
Boundaries are a big thing.
Yeah.
Is putting down those boundaries. Making sure that you're not enabling. Like Katie always says, make it as hard as possible for them to continue to use. And I think this is the hardest place to be because most of the time you see that they have a problem. Other people probably see that, but it's going to take time for their problem to get so bad that they are ready to get help.
Yeah.
And that's what's hard is just waiting in that time. You know, I think we both went where John and Adam were like, hey, we can do it on our own.
Yeah.
So we both tried that first. Okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Not typically successful. But then we had to go to steeper boundaries and steeper, you know, consequences. And that's what's hard because it puts you in a position. And I remember telling John the last time when he's like, I don't want to go. Like, I'm just done. I've been to set, like, I'm just done. And I was like, okay, I love you, but I can't continue to live this way. And that was the hardest thing I ever did. And I told him, if you want help, I'll be right here. But as of right now, this is not the life that I will live and want to live.
It's not what I signed up for.
And that's hard when it comes to putting your foot down and putting those boundaries down. And, you know, even asking yourself some of the questions that we talked about is, biggest one, is my relationship abusive? And that's an immediate exit, you know, for the time being until there's reconciliation. Or how is it affecting the children? Because that's another big question to ask. This is one that'll help you understand is what will happen if things continue on this trajectory. If they're drinking and driving, where will that lead? You know, and there's questions you can ask yourself to see them not wanting help right now. Where is this going to end up? And you putting your foot down and just standing on the truth. Yeah. Which is hard.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Going back to what you were saying, I kind of snickered because I remember when I was like, I can do this on my own. And his tummy hurt. And I was like, Pepto-Bismol.
Yeah. That's simple. You needed a box of Imodium, actually.
Yeah. I mean, Pepto-Bismol, you're fine.
Yeah.
You just get rid of that tummy ache. I mean, just so naive, that kind of thing. And then I realized it was more than what we could do, but he didn't want, he did not want to admit how bad of a problem it was.
Yeah, that's it.
And so I remember it got to a place where we had to do our own intervention. I don't know if you ever did an intervention with John, but...
We didn't, but I did get everybody on the same page where I met with the family and I went, we have to be on the same page because if we're not and you're giving him money here and he's like, we have to be. So I'd love to hear more about the intervention because it's
so intervention's difficult because obviously it's where they're not expecting it and they're kind of just backed into a corner because they've decided that they don't feel like they need the extra help. I think Adam knew back then that he had a problem because he had come to me. He had come to me that he can't get off of the painkillers. But I thought we were in a place where he was taking care of it on his own, hence the Pepto-Bismol and doing all the things. But I quickly realized it was going to take more than just me when we couldn't pay our bills. We couldn't do all this stuff. So lying, there was a web of lies. I was like, okay, I can't do this on my own. And so this also brings me, before I get to the intervention part, this also brings me to a place of you doing it alone is almost impossible.
Yes, that's so good.
And so whether you're at the intervention place or not, you confiding in somebody is the first real big step for you and not feeling so lonely. I had a friend reach out to me a week or two ago, and I said, you messaging me was the hardest thing you've ever done.
Yeah.
And she just started crying. it was just so hard for her to, you said something when I told you that, you were like, yeah, it's bringing it to light.
Yeah. That's the thing. You're both living in darkness. You as a loved one, and then them as the one in addiction.
You're protecting them in that darkness, or you think you are. You're
Yeah.
not.
Yep, that's
You're
right.
not protecting them, but you think you're protecting them.
Yeah.
But you're not. So
there's freedom in that.
There's freedom in telling other people what's going on. And so for me, that's what happened. I started to tell my family, and he didn't realize I told my family. And he had told me later on in this process when he was well clean and stuff. Actually, maybe even when we started the podcast. He was like, I knew when you told your family that I could no longer live in this life. Or I would lose you.
Good. Yeah.
Because I'm very close to my family. And his family knew at that point. So he didn't know my family knew, but I think we were in our apartment and he came down the stairs or something like that. And he saw us all sitting there. And, that was a big, big deal. And he at the time felt very betrayed.
I was going to ask, what was his response? Yeah,
he felt very betrayed that I would go and tell my family, but I think it all rooted from him. Oh, now I can't lie to her anymore. Like I have been. I can choose. Now I have a choice to make. I can choose to stay in this lie, in this sin, or I can choose to get help.
Yeah.
And so that's where he started his healing process of rehabs. It wasn't S2L at the time, but that's where he started. Okay, I'm going to go to rehab. And I was like, yes, we did it.
We did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is imperative. And I just want to encourage you, even with what Katie did, that was bold and that was scary.
Yeah.
Because it was not welcomed by Adam.
No.
You know, their lie was exposed. Their life was exposed. When I got John's family on the same page, and he'll still tell, I think he said it on his interview, but he was so mad at me, like raging mad. It was the best thing I ever did. And even the people that he works with now, he said the best thing that you can ever do is get everybody on the same page, because they cannot continue to live in that lie. And even after treatment, everybody knows that that's even more accountability for them. But expect pushback, expect anger. They're not going to like it. But I have seen probably 98% of the cases come back and say, that's the best thing you ever did for me. Thank you for doing that. Because it's what brings it out. It's what crushes that life.
Yeah.
And it is hard, and it's going to be scary. It's going to be hard, but it will be the best thing that you ever do for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Bring it to light.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like for you. For me, and early on in our journey, it was the intervention.
Yeah. And listen, that took us a while to get to that.
Yeah.
I mean, Katie and I both went through the journey of, okay, we'll do this on our own.
Yeah.
It took us time to get to that. So don't think like you're starting to recognize a problem that it's all just going to come out in the next, like it's going to take time to get to that place where God gives you direction on what to do.
Yeah.
And just grace yourself, because it's a place, like I always say, that you've never been.
Yeah. Bring it to light. Because ultimately, like if they don't think that they have a problem and you're bringing it to their attention, that's brave in and of itself. Be like, I think, maybe even like the 12 beers a day thing, like that's just not normal.
Yeah. It's
right.
not okay.
Like, let's talk about this and let's remedy this situation. Let's see what we can do, and start that communication. Telling others that you trust. There's freedom of not being alone in that, making it, like you said, as hard as possible for them to live in the addiction. So at some point in my journey, he went to rehab. He got out. And if you listen to our previous episode, I talk about how once he got out, he started using again. So then I had to create another boundary.
Yeah.
Another pushback for him, saying, okay, like you just said, I can't live in this life. Okay. So this is what I'm doing. This is the hardest thing I've ever done, but I'm moving out.
Yeah.
Here, or you're moving out. I think I moved in with my parents and we just got rid of our lease, but, our apartment. And so that was the hardest thing. I had to create clear boundaries and tell him, because of your actions, because of your actions, you can choose to get help, or you can choose to continue in the lifestyle that you've chosen. And I hope that you choose to get help.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll be here because ultimately, I think for me, the reason why I did not say I'm going to be back, I'm going to be here when you're here.
Right.
I wanted him, and not everybody has to do it this way, but for me, I felt super conviction that he needed to do this for himself.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he went to that first rehab after intervention to save us.
Yeah.
And I do think that a lot of guys do that, and they can find freedom even if they're going there to save a marriage.
Yeah.
I think that I know that they can find freedom. I've heard it. But for Adam specifically, he'd already tried that. And so he did this all on his own.
Yeah.
He searched the place. He hoped that I would stay around, but he was expecting divorce papers in the mail every day. And so I knew that he knew that.
Yeah.
And so I knew that he was staying there for him.
Yeah.
And ultimately, and you can go back and listen to my testimony, but one of the most powerful things was when he decided, you know what, I'm doing this for me.
Yeah.
And whether Katie is with me or not, I'm going to choose to follow God.
That's right.
And at the same time, I said, whether you choose to heal Adam in this, I choose to follow you, you know? And so that created that, ability for us to say we did this for each other or for ourselves, but in turn, God used it for a greater purpose in our marriage,
which is so amazing.
You know, it's so amazing.
Which is so cool.
So making it as hard as possible. And so for me, that was moving out. Do this on your own.
Yeah, you got to figure this out.
Figure it out.
Yeah, and I did the same thing when I dropped John off at S2L, and I was like, I don't know what this, like, right now I'm done. And he said when she left, he was like, I don't think I'll ever see her again.
Wow.
And he that's what God worked on his heart. He said, I have to know that if something happens to Chelsea, if she's never here again, that I'm going to be okay, and that I'm going to do this without her. And so I think there is a shift that happens where I'm going to do this to make everybody else happy, compared to I've got to figure this out for myself. So that I can live, you know? And so many guys I talked about in the last episode go back to the ultimatum. There's something with men, like, not like an ultimatum. It's not an ultimatum. It's a choice that you have. I'm not giving you an ultimatum. I'm saying, hey, this is the choice. I want to be here, but if you're going to choose drugs, and I told John in the beginning, you can't have both. It's me or drugs, but it's one or the other. And that's not an ultimatum. It's just a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
You know?
That's your choice.
Frankly, yeah. And they say if nothing changes, nothing changes. So, like, mamas, daddies, wives, if you don't put your foot down and quit enabling or just making those hard choices, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
Because they're able to stay in that darkness. They're able to stay in the sin and to continue on doing exactly what they've always done. And the hardest part is us having to put those boundaries down. Just brutal some days.
Yeah. And I say one of the most important things, and it's kind of like, oh, duh. But, I mean, it's true. It's pray.
100%.
I mean, whether your loved one recognizes they need help but chooses not to because they just want to stay in that sin, or whether they don't think that they have a problem, but you recognize they have a problem, pray.
It changes everything.
Pray.
Yeah.
I remember just being on my hands and my knees, totally surrendered to God. Never felt that up until then, of the complete surrender that God had given. That I said, God, He is yours. I surrender our marriage. I surrender him. I was constantly in prayer about it.
Yeah.
All the time.
Constantly.
And that was just some of the sweetest, most genuine, heartbreaking growth for me.
Yep. A pure 100% intimacy with God.
Yeah. And it stinks to have to go through it in that time, but that valley, you always hear about it. The valley that you take and that you're in, there is true beauty in it.
Yeah. My papa has always taught me that, and I miss him so much, but valleys are the place to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not the mountaintops. The valleys are the shade and the food and the rivers for thirst and hunger. And, you know, the mountaintops, we get to see where we've been and where we've come from.
Mm-hmm.
But those valleys, and I mean, we can speak that. I mean, we both have the tear-stained pillows
Exactly.
in the
I know.
rooms that, like, when I think back to
Mm-hmm.
that, it was such perfect intimacy in such a broken time
Yeah.
of God standing right there beside of us and walking us through this.
Yeah.
Which is so special because it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, it is hard. And I'm so often reminded that, you know, this life is our life between two gardens.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Garden of Eden and heaven. And so often we're in this life that is just sometimes gut-wrenching and hard, but we have these beautiful moments that come in it. And, you know, we're making our own gardens right here, but we're still waiting for that ultimate garden that God, you know.
That's beautiful.
That is our ultimate garden.
I love that.
So even in the hard, you know, you've got this, and stay strong, because that's what I needed encouragement when I was stay strong, keep putting your foot down, keep speaking truth. The backlash comes, but you keep doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I will say this, if you don't have somebody that you can reach out to, we can be that first step, because sometimes it's just the first step of just telling somebody.
Yeah.
We would love to be that person for you. Now, we will eventually encourage you to find somebody near you so you can meet with them. But sometimes it's just like taking that first step of just saying, my husband has a problem.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's just that first step of, I don't know what to do. My husband has a problem. And then you just like, there's just like this wash over you. Like,
It's such a good way to put it.
I just did it.
Yeah.
I just did it, Chelsea.
Yeah.
I just told somebody. And, so if we need to be that for you,
we will be.
reach out to us. We can give you maybe some materials that you can look at, read, listen to, or just go encourage you for counseling, whatever it may be. But reach out to us in that. Do you have anything else to say?
No, just
Okay.
we'll reiterate that you're not alone, because
not.
we know right here, right now in this subject, it's probably one of the loneliest places. But we want you to know that you're not alone. And like Katie said, we are here to walk this with you and to encourage you through it.
Yeah, I agree. We love you. You're not alone.
Yeah.
We've hoped that you have found hope in this, that you're not. And that you'll reach out if you need to. We're here for you at Hope After Addiction through Instagram or Facebook, or our Gmail at hopeafteraddiction@gmail.com. And we thank you so much for joining us today. Have a blessed day.